Good evening, America. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting as always from the nation's capital and the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. This morning, the first thing I did after a late nighter last night doing journalism, I had a cup of Wired to Fish coffee. It got my day started right. It can do the same for you. WiredToFishCoffee.com is the place to go. Wired, the number 2, FishCoffee.com. Use the promo code JustNews. You'll get 10% off, which is also a great deal. All right, President Trump is on the road for his first major foreign trip, and he made some big news today, as he often does, this time from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where he began his Middle East trip. He discussed dealing with Iran in the region, as well as securing hundreds of billions of dollars in investments from the Saudis into the United States. We already had $8 trillion of new investment. Add $600 billion more to it today. And speaking of that, there's been a lot of economic news lately, not the news you were told to expect a month ago from the legacy media. Remember, they told you the sky was falling, the market was collapsing. Well, the market is back in positive territory for the year. Inflation came in at 2.3%. Now you put that $600 billion in new revenue that's going to come in from Saudi Arabia. The economy is just fine, just like we told you on this network. Don't panic. Play the long game on this strategy. Also, today, President Trump spoke about the war between Israel and Hamas and signaled some policy shifts in the region. Perhaps the biggest piece of news today, he said that he's going to lift the sanctions temporarily against Syria, a country that used to be ruled by a brutal dictator named Assad, but now is under a provisional government. He said he wanted to give a chance for that country to have a shot at peace. Some of the big deals all throughout the region that President Trump will be doing. He also made clear he might take a detour over to Turkey some point during this trip to see if he can help in the Russia-Ukraine conversations, which begin on the 15th. And by the way, Marco Rubio named, he is going. He'll be there day in and day out as those Ukraine-Russia peace talks get off to their first start. And finally, some impact, something we promised we would follow for you from the moment we broke the story. Remember the memo we gave you just about a week ago saying that Joe Biden's White House told the national security community, the FBI, Homeland, you can target Americans even if they're not involved in crimes. In fact, if you're just concerned about non-criminal behavior they're in, you can start to go after them. That was a major weakening of civil liberty protections, a major change to the standard that the FBI has used for decades, which is you must have a predicate, meaning a reasonable factual basis that a crime occurred before you can open up on an American. Not for Joe Biden. That's why he went after Catholics and gun enthusiasts and parents who were at school boards. But perhaps the most important thing happened last night. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, telling Just the News that it has withdrawn that guidance. It is no longer operative. No federal agency or agent should use it. And in fact, she went a little bit further, saying it is very clear that this domestic terrorism policy that Joe Biden came out was nothing more than a political effort to silence critics. And it was absolutely, in her words, an abuse of power. Just think about that. The head top intelligence official saying that the domestic counterterrorism policies of Joe Biden were an abuse of power targeting your civil liberties. That's some of the news we've had breaking over at justthenews.com. My amazing co-host, Amanda Head, she's been cracking all day with big news on this trip. What else you got on your radar, Amanda?
Yes, indeed. Well, actually, I want to touch on a story that we talked about yesterday. The Trump administration, of course, letting white South Africans into this country as refugees. And the administration's position is that the government of South Africa is passing racist laws targeting whites, especially white farmers. But President Trump has insisted that the move isn't about race at all. So I don't want to necessarily talk about the merits of letting those South African refugees, or Afrikaners as they are also known, into this country. By the way, it was only around 50 people, and there are arguments to be made on both sides of the issue. For example, saying these South Africans are refugees while also saying Ukrainians are not. So there's some legitimate debate to be had here. But what I really want to focus on was the left's reaction to it, because it's been blowing up online, and because they have been all for letting millions upon millions of unvetted illegal immigrants into this country from Central and South America, the Middle East, other parts of Africa. But when it comes to 49 white South Africans, there is now a huge issue. Take a look at what MSNBC had to say about it.
Yes, it's so deeply and morally wrong-headed and repulsive. These are the descendants of the people who created the most diabolical system of white supremacy in human history, apartheid. They're not directly responsible for it. In a country where, by the way, white people make up 7% of the population and own 78% of the farmland. So it's actually, there's no injustice here. As you mentioned, it's taking places away from refugees who are really being crushed by authoritarian governments and military governments for these folks who have never had anything happen to them.
And they went on to explain that this was proof that the Trump administration is a, quote, white nationalist project. And again, this is all over about 50 South Africans coming to the United States as refugees. Just the News also reported yesterday, and we briefly mentioned it on the show last night, that the Episcopal Church ended its refugee program with the United States government because of the Afrikaners' arrival. John, maybe if Trump had taken a page out of Joe Biden's book and flown these people in the dead of the night and dropped them into various cities in the interior of this country, there wouldn't have been a word about it.
Yeah, maybe. Actually, listen, every time there's good economic news and the Democrats have no response to what's going on in the world, they go back to identity politics, right? They try to create racial strife. By the way, if the President Trump's administration is a white supremacist project, someone should tell all the Hispanic and black voters who supported him in record numbers for a Republican. I guess they were misled, or maybe MSNBC was misled. Yeah. We'll see. All right, we're very lucky to be joined at the top of the show by a man on the front lines of some of the most historic events going on in Congress right now. And he is a congressman for the great state of Michigan and possibly considering a run for Senate in that state, big seat up for grabs in 2026. Congressman Bill Huizenga. Congressman, good to have you on, sir.
John, good to be with you. Thanks. I appreciate it.
It's a great honor to have you on. I want to start with just a little bit of that news we talked about a bit ago. Tulsi Gabbard pulling back this guidance that said under the name of fighting domestic terrorism, Joe Biden told the FBI, you can investigate someone even if they're not involved in criminal conduct. It's just concerning to you. Go ahead and open up on them. She said it was an abuse of power. I'd like to just get your reaction to what she did yesterday.
She was exactly dead on, and your analysis is absolutely correct. You know, we saw the Biden administration weaponize virtually every element of government, and including the FBI, the IRS, the EPA, you name it. The list goes on and on. And this is something that has to happen. You know, my subcommittee that I chair on foreign affairs has been dealing with the State Department, and you might remember the fake info czar, or czarina, I guess, really is what she was out there. Supposedly, this was a program that was supposed to look at foreign disinformation, and yet what did they do? They actually took this program and turned it internal and made it a domestic misinformation by their definition, of course, and went after those U.S. citizens. So we've seen this as a pattern. So I applaud what Tulsi Gabbard, my former colleague, is doing, and frankly, what the Trump administration is doing with this.
Yeah, and so you deserve a lot of credit because you really have done a lot to highlight what the Global Engagement Center, now closed, but was doing at the State Department. Really great congressional oversight work that's made a difference on this. Congrats.
Absolutely. Sir, it is kind of, I think, in the Democrat wheelhouse to find crimes that were not there, at least during that Biden administration with that policy, and finding bad news where there is none. And they are very concerned about what has happened this morning. President Trump possibly trading on his name. Of course, no mention of the Biden family trading on that name. But President Trump securing $600 billion worth of investment on the way to another trillion, which would take us to what, 9 trillion?
9 trillion, I think it's the number, yeah.
Sir, how much is this going to help the American economy and kind of hand in hand help you guys in passing new budget infrastructure?
Well, look, economic activity is the key. Economic activity is what will drive our recovery. Having foreign investment is a key part of the goals of tariffs and the pressure that the Trump administration has been, by the way, not just talking about, has been implementing. And, you know, I applaud them for this. I mean, $600 billion out of the Saudis. You add that, you know, the Swiss have come in with $150 billion of additional investment. They've at least proposed that. You've got India, you've got other countries that are coming to the table, and Great Britain, who's been a great ally and trading partner in the past. Yeah, we're really putting where the rubber hits the road. I'm from Michigan, so we have to use car analogies, of course.
Of course.
So, yeah, but this is where the rubber hits the road and where the action is, and we ought to be applauding this. And it's not just in, you know, traditional manufacturing. We're talking AI. We are talking in all these other areas that are growth potential here in the United States. And rather than those going somewhere else overseas, they're going to be here in the United States. And what's amazing is, they simply couldn't celebrate any positive news from the left. And you know, and and obviously it adds insult to injury for them that it's President Trump who's actually driving this economic activity. But we've got to do this. We've got to pull the economy out of the ditch where Joe Biden left it, and Donald Trump's doing that.
Yeah. Sir, I know one of the big prizes of the 2026 election, the Michigan Senate seat, opened. A lot of people excited about it. A lot of excitement about the possibility that you might jump and put your hat into this race. That's a really big moment. Tell us what's going on. Are you interested in running for Senate potentially?
Yeah, I am. This was not necessarily on my radar screen when I when started this. Certainly, I mean, in the House of Representatives, the House of Lords, the Star Chamber, sometimes called the Senate. It's a confusing place. It's very different. But here's why I am responding to the phone calls that I'm getting, because we know that President Trump needs allies in pushing forward not his agenda, America's agenda, right? And this is our agenda, and it's an agenda that he is the leader of, and he needs those allies in the Senate. We need to make sure that we maintain the majority in the House. We can do both if we do our jobs. If we get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act reinstated, and making sure that those middle income and lower income families who have saw real tax relief, that it's maintained. Making sure that we get the whole budget reconciliation process put in place. Making sure that we have common sense energy policy and common sense regulatory policy, so that manufacturing can not just battle back against the government all the time, but it can go and thrive. And certainly, as we're seeing with the tariffs and the threat of tariffs, we've got a lot of those companies, American-made, American-originated companies that are making things overseas, wanting to come back home, and we need to encourage that.
Absolutely. Well, one of those, Honda, bringing manufacturing here from Canada. A month ago, we were hearing that these tariffs were going to destroy our economy, but we've got a lot of good news. Egg prices are down. The inflation report for April was the third straight month that it was below expectations. Things are doing really well. But with respect to the tariffs, how has that impacted Michigan?
Well, certainly the automotive industry is on the front lines of that. Under NAFTA/USMCA, which, by the way, this was another one of those examples when Bill Clinton signed the NAFTA into law, immediately he was calling for changes. Every single president after him pledged that they were going to make some vital changes to NAFTA. There's one person who did it, and he was laughed at, by the way, when he said he was going to do it. But the USMCA was an improvement on that, and in that we saw both agriculture and automotive manufacturing, things like that really have built a cross-border presence. We need to make sure that we have an on-ramp or an off-ramp. I guess I'm back to my Michigan car analogies here. But we need to make sure that there's a transition that's able to happen, because those companies are wanting to come back to the United States. And we've got to figure out that path forward. What does that look like? Secretary Bessent and his team have been doing a phenomenal job. He testified in front of our Financial Services Committee that I'm the vice chair of earlier, I guess, end of last week, before he went off to Geneva and was negotiating with the Chinese and others. He's really got a solid understanding of what needs to happen here. He's following the President Trump's objectives and his directives, but he's also forcing people to come to the table and have those serious, hard conversations. And I applaud him. I applaud the team, and certainly the leadership of President Trump. But we have to go through a little bit of pain here. It's a little bumpy. There have no doubt. But I truly believe that in the long run, this will be good for American workers, which should be our key goal here. It'll be good for American consumers, and it will be good for America writ large. And if there's a silver lining to COVID, and there's very few, one of them maybe being parents actually plugging in and figuring out what their kids are being taught in school. But the other is what was revealed and stripped back was how overly dependent we were on our economic adversaries. I won't call them enemies, but certainly adversaries who controlled everything from paper masks to medical equipment, to pharmaceuticals, to manufacturing, and they literally had the ability to turn it on or turn it off. And that really, I think, underscored for a lot of us here and in America that we need to pull some of this back. We need to make sure that we can be masters of our own destiny and not be overly dependent on these adversaries overseas.
Yeah, I know you've been working hard in Congress to make sure that those next generation of policies, they bring the bacon back home, bring that capability back home, come across the back into this country, particularly in Michigan. Congressman Bill Huizenga, what a great honor to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, John, Amanda, great being with you, and let's go make America great again, right?
Absolutely. That's an important mission, no doubt about it. Good to have you on, sir. All right, folks, a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll recap President Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia today. A lot of news. What does it mean for trade and national security? We'll answer those questions next, right after these messages. Hey, it's a new day in America and a new administration in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of excitement and optimism about the future, but the reality is there's a lot of work to do as well, especially when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. The truth is that the forces that are responsible for breaking our healthcare system aren't going to simply go away. The challenges our system faces won't disappear overnight. Now more than ever, you need to be prepared. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. Their doctors are medical professionals that you can trust, and their line of prescription medical kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy, as well as your family. Whether it's the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, or the travel kit, these prescription kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of these medications. From the flu to strep throat, from COVID to the bird flu, from a trip to the beach to a trip overseas, the Wellness Company has a prescription kit designed to keep you and your family safe. Make America healthy again. Start at home. Do your part and protect the health of you and your family. Go to twc.health/justnews today and order. That's twc.health/justnews and use the promo code JUSTNEWS to save 10% off.
Welcome back, everybody. President Trump was welcomed in beautiful Riyadh, Saudi Arabia earlier this morning, where he spoke with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and other Saudi officials about issues of trade, ending wars between Hamas and Israel. It's going to be a pivotal trip, especially because we are getting some reports that there's some tension between Washington and Jerusalem in recent weeks, and the recent talks could put the pressure on other countries to come to the table and make a deal with the United States, like China, who has struck a temporary trade deal with the Trump administration already. So joining us now to talk about all of that and even more if we can squeeze it in is Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He's also a 26-year Navy veteran who served as a military diplomat in China, as well as a whole host of other positions. Brent Sadler. Brent, thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start with a very stark contrast between President Trump's reception in Saudi Arabia compared to Joe Biden. Joe Biden is someone who the Democrats like to say had decades of foreign policy experience, a statesman, and President Trump was a rabble-rouser, came from the outside, a businessman who doesn't know anything about foreign policy, and yet the Saudi Crown Prince seemed to have an even warmer reception for President Trump than Biden. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's inexcusable for someone like President Biden to miss being a good diplomat. He was extremely horrible. And Trump had a lot of affinity with the Crown Prince, even in his first term. And he's just continuing to double down on that. The Saudis are and I think the region, so his other stops in Qatar, as well as the UAE, I think you'll see similar reaction. But on Biden's first trip, he ridiculed and insulted the Crown Prince to the king in front of him. And I think that loss of face meant that the Biden administration, no matter how hard they would have tried or as much as Saudi Arabia would have benefited, there was only going to be so far that we could have actually taken things forward. That all is behind us now, thankfully.
Yeah. So I'm always interested, Brent, when you look at the Middle East, it's always been a teeter-totter. Sometimes it tilts towards Iran, sometimes it tilts towards Israel and the Arab Gulf states. President Trump inherited a Middle East in 2017 that was really to the advantage of Iran, strengthened a nuclear deal that gave him lots of cash. And over the last 8 years, he's slowly been able to move that seesaw back to at least break-even status. And now with Syria falling out of Iran's sphere of influence and maybe another round of Abraham Accords, the opportunity that there could be an American-Israeli Arab alliance that is really able to counter Iran seems very reasonable and very realistic. Tell us, obviously the strategy is intention, but how far are we on this process, and what is happening to Iran? Is it losing its negotiating bargaining chips?
Well, Iran is definitely on its back foot, but it's not out of the fight, and I think that's a caution. If we in D.C. declare, the Trump administration declares victory too soon, and take and relieve the pressure on the Iranian regime, we could find that they recover themselves and we're right back to where we were a year ago, or October 6th of 2023, day before the horrific assault against Israel by Hamas, Iran's proxy. So the pressure needs to be continued. Iran has to capitulate on its nuclear program. And then, as President Trump mentioned earlier today in Saudi Arabia, that we can turn the page to a more positive and more prosperous future and peaceful across the region. But key in applying that pressure is going to be Saudi Arabia and a new relationship that I think it's been said before. The Saudis are looking for security assurances because of fears of Iran, but also access to nuclear power as they try to modernize and diversify up the value chain, their own economy and their own energy sector. And I think the Abraham Accords will be a key venue to which to solidify this with a wider regional peace. So it really relies on the threat perception of Iran that all of these countries feel, and then continuing the pressure to get to a better place. We're still far away from that, but we're far further to success than we've been in living memory.
Yeah, great point.
Brent, there was another assurance that President Trump very pointedly offered from the stage this morning when he talked about nation building. To the degree that Saudi Arabia will absolutely be key in resolving the issues with Iran, how much of an impact do you think it had on the Crown Prince that President Trump said, look, you know, you guys have performed a miracle the Arabian way. We're not here to bring the West to you. You're doing a great job. How much do you think that impacted and endeared the Crown Prince to President Trump and negotiations with Iran?
Well, I think the communication between President Trump and the Crown Prince, I think it was no surprise. But if you looked at the reaction of the room to that, it was, very ecstatic. They were very happy to hear it. And it's not something that world leaders are used to hearing from a sitting U.S. president. So it definitely symbolizes a changed approach that you're seeing in President Trump to embrace our partners for what they are and what they can offer, and not trying to force an American solution through them. It's a very different approach. It's, I think, a reality of the world that we live in. Quite frankly, it's always been the path to success. And it's good to see that our president's embracing it and that our partners are also seeing the opportunity for what it is to partner with us.
Yeah, great point. Brent, you've always been, I think, a really important siren for all of us about the problems that the Pentagon still has with basic things like procurement. And there was some really disturbing testimony this week in the Senate about our exhausting of significant missile supplies. It seems like America's great warfighting machine should be able to keep up, but apparently a little skirmish with the Houthis have left us short on really important missiles. What do you see there, and what are some of the warning signs that we need to fix?
Yeah, this issue of munitions and munitions production is not something new to me. It goes back over 10 years when I was at Pacific Command, now Indo-Pacific Command. And it was General Mattis, when he became Secretary of Defense Mattis during Trump's first term, he classified all the discussions. So the public has been kind of obscured from understanding how bad it is, but it's only gotten marginally better. And I think we saw that with the artillery problem with the 155 rounds that we couldn't produce fast enough to supply to Ukraine. And then we saw the wake-up call off of Israel when we defended against an Iranian attack, ballistic missiles, that we expended within minutes the amount of missiles that it takes a month to produce on one engagement. If it's a fight in the Pacific, there's going to be dozens of those types of engagements on a daily basis in the opening phases of that war. So if this is taken as a wake-up call, and it appears that Congress, at least for money, has gotten the message, it's a different thing to get the industrial might behind that. Again, what's frustrating is this has been a problem brewing for 10 years, and we need to be making hundreds of these missiles like SM-3s, SM-2s, just to mention some of the top ones that get a lot of play. We're only able to make like a dozen of those in a year. We need to be making hundreds.
Mm-hmm. Brent, President Trump has indicated in the past that he would be open to lifting those sanctions on Syria. He officially announced that this morning. He indicated that there obviously was a reason for those sanctions in the first place. They serve their purpose, but now Syria deserves to have a chance at greatness and a chance at peace. What does that mean for the United States?
Well, I think removing the sanctions on Syria with a new regime, with potential, there is some grounds to be optimistic, but there's a lot to be very concerned with, especially with the way that Christians in Syria are being treated right now. But that being said, there's very little to lose at this stage to offer relief and sanctions on this new regime in Syria. And then those can be put back on if things change. There's a lot other potential to move that regime in a more positive direction at this stage. So I'd see it as an opportunity, but again, we have to be cautious and hold this new regime to their word.
Brent, before we let you go, how soon do you think President Trump would be proven right or proven wrong on lifting those sanctions?
I think it'll be fairly quick. I mean, the de facto leader of the new regime in Damascus, I think, was in Saudi Arabia or his plan will be in the area as President Trump is traveling. Whether or not a meeting occurs is not something that I've heard. But again, if a deal can be made and if the regime is able to deliver on it, we'll know within weeks, if not days, if they're able to enforce that with their military forces throughout the region. Again, it is a tenuous peace that's in Syria. It's not quite out of its civil war yet.
Right.
Yeah, great point.
There's a deal to be made. The deal maker in chief, I think, is intent on getting it done. Brent Sadler from the Great Heritage Foundation. Thanks so much for being here, Brent.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Tariffs are driving Honda to move their SUV production from the Great White North back down here to the United States. So what other effects from the tariffs are we seeing in this country? Quite a few. That's next.
Hey, America, for decades, you've worked hard, paid your taxes, and stood by the values that built this great nation: honesty, accountability, and, of course, faith. But now you're seeing a government that's bloated, reckless, and in many cases, completely unaccountable. The good news: you're not imagining it, and you're not alone. President Trump is back in the White House, taking on unfair trade practices, fighting waste and fraud, and boldly reaffirming our Christian foundations. But even the strongest leaders need support from the people. That's why I recommend AMAC, the conservative alternative for Americans 50 and over who still believe in truth, transparency, and the Constitution. For just $16 a year, you'll receive the AMAC magazine, access to exclusive money-saving discounts, and become part of a community that's holding government accountable. Now go join today at amac.us/justnews. Again, that's amac.us/justnews. Facts matter, your voice matters, and with AMAC, they're both being heard. Welcome back, America. Just a month ago, Democrats and the legacy media were telling us the sky has begun to fall because Donald Trump imposed tariffs. A month later, the economy is doing really well. The market is fully back, and we're getting deals, and we're getting new investments in America. I think the predictions might have been wrong, but I thought we'd turn to one of our trusted experts. He's the co-host of the Thrive Time radio show. He's a contributor for Entrepreneur Magazine, and he just had Eric Trump speak at one of his recent business workshops. He's our good friend, Clay Clark. Clay, welcome back.
Hey, I really do appreciate you for allowing me to be here with you, both of you tonight.
Well, we love having you on. You understand the way entrepreneurs think. And Donald Trump is he's a deal maker, but he's a deal maker that's always trying to get entrepreneurialism going in America. A month into the tariffs, I think the worst dire predictions, the economy was going to blow up, stock market was going to end, we're all going to hell in a handbasket. They don't seem to have materialized. In fact, just the opposite, right?
Well, I'll say this. President Trump was in the Middle East today. Meanwhile, I'm in the Middle Eastern part of Oklahoma right now, and Eric Trump will be joining us at one of our workshops coming up soon. So I deal with real businesses. I mean, doctors, dentists, lawyers, mortgage companies, home builders. And all I can say is since President Donald J. Trump has boldly implemented these tariffs, I'm seeing more and more American business owners have an excitement about the future of the American economy. You say, well, how does the excitement matter? Why does it matter? Well, small business owners aren't going to buy things. They're not going to invest. They're not going to hire when they believe that the economy is going to fall apart. And many entrepreneurs are telling me they're seeing more and more people reach out to inquire about getting a mortgage. More and more people are reaching out to, I know it sounds crazy, go out to dinner. More and more people are excited about the future of America. And I think President Trump has brought that enthusiasm back, but on a very specific and measurable level. by imposing these tariffs, he's making it sane again for American businesses to want to manufacture things in these United States. Without these tariffs, it just doesn't make any sense for American businesses to be able to manufacture products and services in these United States. Again, for American businesses to be competitive, to make products and services, we have to have these tariffs in place. So again, I appreciate President Trump taking bold actions. I know it feels a little bit painful sometimes to be uncertain about the future, but I'm seeing right here in Main Street that more and more American businesses are excited about the future of the American economy.
Huge.
And honestly, there's nothing more demonstrable for the American people than getting a discount on American goods. And as a result of these tariffs, more people are purchasing American. So American businesses are selling more. So I saw a commercial today for a business that was offering a 25% tariff discount. That's something that the American people are seeing in the windows of the stores where they shop, in the ads on the websites that they visit. And I got to think that whether even if Democrats a month ago said that it was doomsday and the sky was falling and hell in a handbasket and all those other idioms, seems like there are measurable ways that the American people are already benefiting.
Well, I'll say this, too. I know that I'm probably older than both of you guys here, okay? But this is the thing. I remember when you would go to the store and you could buy products that said Made in America. Remember that? You could go to the store and you could intentionally, as a shopper, choose to buy products that were made in America. Now, it's hard to find anything made in America. I mean, my microphone here, not made in America. My headphones, not made in America. My tie, not made in America. My shirt, not made in America. President Trump, what he's doing is he's raising awareness for people to want to buy in America. By President Trump imposing these tariffs, it's causing, to your point, Amanda, it's causing people to discuss, what is a tariff? Are tariffs good? Should we be buying things made in America? Man, I wish more things were made in America. So it's brought it to a top of mind awareness for a lot of Americans. And I would just encourage everybody out there today, if you can buy something made in America, do it. I think it's very important that we go out of our way to support the companies that are already beginning to bring jobs back to the United States. But again, I applaud President Donald J. Trump for making a smart decision. And as a business owner, I define SMART as S-M-A-R-T. It's specific, it's measurable, it's actionable, it's realistic, and it's time sensitive. President Trump has set specific measures in place that are smart. They're specific, they're measurable, they're actionable, they're realistic, and they're time sensitive. And I'm beginning to see more and more American business owners get excited about the future of our country. Under the Biden administration, Americans were depressed. American business owners, that's who I fellowship with. American business owners were depressed. They were concerned. They were worried about the future. With President Donald J. Trump at the helm, many American business owners are excited about the future and what the future has to hold for our country. But I encourage everybody out there, again, get behind President Donald J. Trump's tariffs. Support them when you can. Buy from American businesses that are making products and services in these United States. And again, with these tariffs in place, I believe very soon you're going to see more and more manufacturing return to these United States.
Yeah, I think you're right. I want to take a look at the deals already in place. We got Great Britain. That was long elusive for a big trade deal. China's got a 90-day reprieve that's to the advantage of the United States. It feels like India and Canada would be the next two big shoes to fall. Give us your thoughts on where the next trade deals might come from and how important Canada and India are for maybe a really big play for President Trump.
Well, I can tell you this. One of my clients I work with, he's a CPA and a candidate. It's big shout out to him. It's Spurl CPA. He's an accountant up there in Canada. And he's telling me that these Trump tariff discussions are beginning to make rumblings in Canada. More and more Canadians are talking again about America, working with America. More and more Canadians are talking about their economy. More and more Canadians are aware of what is going on in their country and their country's need to work with these United States. But if President Trump hadn't taken bold actions, these things would have taken, what, decades to get done? Maybe never gotten done? I mean, President Trump will only be with us for 4 more years or 4 years in this term here. So again, he had to take bold action. And for anybody who hasn't read his book, The Art of the Deal, what President Trump preached in his book and what he does in real life is he goes for strong, bold action. That's move number 1, take strong, bold action. Number 2, it causes people to react or to pivot or to come to the table with an offer that makes sense. So again, President Trump has taken big, bold action. I don't claim to have a prophetic look at the future as far as which countries are going to come to the table next, but I can tell you from my Canadian accountant client up there, Spurl CPA, he's telling me that the people in Canada are talking about these tariffs. And I believe under the Biden administration, America was going to continue to be last again. But President Trump is working diligently to make America great again.
Yeah, keep an eye on Alberta. That energy industry wants to bust into the United States in a big way. They could be a force behind the Canadian Prime Minister forcing his hand. Clay, as always, great to have you on. What's the quickest way to get your show?
Yeah, ThriveTimeShow.com, ThriveTimeShow.com to come join Eric Trump and Tim Tebow at our upcoming workshops.
Wow.
ThriveTimeShow.com. Tim Tebow, Eric Trump coming up in June and September.
Keep good company. How about that? Good stuff. All right, Clay, thanks for joining us and making sense of all this. All right, folks, a quick commercial break ahead. After that, I'm going to ask a quick question. Are radical DAs elevating non-citizens over Americans? One organization is looking into it, and we're going to talk about that next.
Welcome back, everybody. The Immigration Reform Law Institute has formally requested that U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi open a Department of Justice investigation into Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner and other state prosecutors. In a letter to Bondi, they argued that policies championed by Krasner and like-minded DAs give preferential treatment to non-citizens, including illegal immigrants, over American citizens, particularly in criminal prosecution. So with us now to talk all about that is the executive director of that organization. He also serves as the general counsel for the Immigration Reform Law Institute, who sent that letter to AG Bondi, Dale Wilcox. Dale, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
How did you first get tipped off about this?
Well, we had been seeing reports in the news, and we decided to dig in using public records laws. And we obtained records from Larry Krasner's office there in Philadelphia, and we discovered that they were treating Americans differently than criminal aliens. Let me explain this to you. So Krasner's office has set up a sub-office for immigrants, and they are looking at charges, criminal charges brought against these non-citizens, and they are either dismissing or downgrading the charges so that there will not be any immigration consequences. And let me explain. Under our immigration law, you can be deported if you commit certain particular crimes like aggravated DUI, spousal abuse, crimes with a firearm, drug-related charges. So the Philly DA is downgrading charges so that these individuals will not be caught up under federal immigration law and be sent out of the country. And the problem here is Americans don't get that same courtesy. Americans are in their own country being disadvantaged in the law. Foreigners are being treated better and getting better sentences, better plea deals, charges dismissed over the people who voted these prosecutors into office.
It is remarkable. And then on top of it, once these people get back on the street, they pose yet another danger, as we saw with the terrible cases involving Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungary and others. What has been the response? Have you gotten any confirmation from the Justice Department that they're on the case?
No, not yet, but this is an egregious violation of the law. The Supreme Court has been clear that discrimination based on citizenship, just like race, is illegal. It's unconstitutional. About a week ago, Attorney General Bondi started looking into the Hennepin County, Wisconsin prosecutor's office because they said that they were going to consider race in their prosecution decisions and plea deals. Citizenship is no different than race under the Constitution and according to Supreme Court precedent. So we've reached out today to Attorney General Pam Bondi and to Harmeet Dillon of the Civil Rights Division and asked them to open an investigation into these Soros-funded progressive prosecutors who are not treating Americans fairly.
Dale, I don't think there is a legal justification for what they are doing here. I have no doubt, though, that they do have some type of justification. Maybe you haven't heard a response from Larry Krasner's office or some of these other DAs across the country, but what do you find is the characteristic refrain when it comes to defending these types of actions? Is it because these folks have already, experienced civil rights abuses? How do they explain it?
Saying that no one should experience collateral, or at least immigrants should not experience collateral consequences for their crimes. Now, federal immigration law is civil and administrative. It's not criminal. It's collateral to the criminal action. It should have nothing to do with it. Americans all the time experience collateral consequences to committing crimes. They lose their driver's license. They might be denied child custody. They might have to go through drug testing occasionally. They might have to register as a criminal in certain states and localities. There are collateral consequences to committing crimes. These progressive prosecutors are trying to protect immigrants from our federal immigration law. They don't agree with it. They don't agree that these criminals should be sent out of the country. So they're doing all they can, setting up special offices at taxpayer expense and refusing to prosecute or downgrading their charges.
All right, so one of the things your great investigative work turned up is this immigration counsel that basically is like a free lawyer for immigrants that have been charged with a crime. It's kind of a weird thing. I've never seen this before. Tell us what this lawyer does and how it really tips the system in a very different way.
Yeah, Krasner set up an immigration unit within his prosecutor's office. And this unit will take cases where there might possibly be immigration consequences, and they will examine those cases and potentially downgrade the charges or dismiss them altogether. Now think about that. This is the prosecutor's office. This is the office that is charged with prosecuting crimes. They are playing both sides. There's a conflict of interest here. They're supposed to be the prosecutor, represent the people, but then yet they're playing public defender and looking to downgrade the charges on individuals for illegal reasons. That shouldn't be. Americans don't get the same treatment, so this needs to be stopped.
Dale, I know that this was obviously happening in Los Angeles under DA George Gascon. It was happening in in London Breed's San Francisco. She's thankfully gone. But is there a common thread? I think back 20 years, even the most liberal of liberal DAs across this country, I don't think would espouse any type of support for something like this. Is there a George Soros connection? Where is this ideology coming from?
Yeah, certainly there is. George Soros contributed to Krasner's campaign. His organizations that he's behind. So there is this progressive movement that is trying to open the borders. We saw that with the 4 years of Biden and what he did to the country, intentionally creating a crisis for the nation. They do not want anyone removed from the country, including criminal aliens. It boggles the mind. And what is worse, in Krasner's case, we got the document production from our public records request. He was stating publicly that, we're only downgrading minor crimes. And we got a list of the crimes. And if I could read some, 9 rape, indecent assault and sexual assault on a child, 9 robbery and burglary, 12 firearms, 1 vehicular homicide, terroristic threats, flight from the law enforcement officer, indecent exposure, unlawful contact with a minor. The list just goes on and on and on. So they're not even being truthful about who they're assisting in these offices.
Jeez.
Unreal.
Amazing.
Dale Wilcox, thank you so much for being on this case. Thanks for being here tonight, and keep us updated on this. We'd love to hear how it is transpiring down the road.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, we've got a few more headlines that we want to hit before we head out for the night, so stay right there, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. I want to hit an interesting story. The Treasury Department announced that they have collected a record $16.3 billion in customs duties in April. Yeah. So for the year, that's going to bring it up to close to 60. Now, if I remember correctly from the Trump administration, the price tag to finish building the border wall was about $18 billion. So 1 month of revenue from customs enforcement covers the border wall.
Yeah, that wasn't a full year of a full month of tariffs because they got announced on the 3rd. It takes about 10 days for them to really take effect. I've heard that these could be anywhere from, if the tariffs stay in place long enough, $30 to $50 billion a month, which would be up to $360 to $600 billion a year in new revenue. Yeah. That brings down and balances the budget in a way. Now, deals will make this revenue go down, but it does show you that the worst case scenario is we start bringing the deficit down just through this external tariff payments that are coming in. A lot of people excited about that. Now, The deals are going to change the look of this, but it's something that could be really significant on the bottom line of the United States government.
Nice little side effect.
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk about something that happened this morning that to me was an indication of endearment between President Trump and the Saudi Crown Prince. And also, in a strange way, a sign of respect. A prefab Mickey D's that was delivered for President Trump's enjoyment. I don't know if he imbibed, but...
Everybody knows President Trump likes that Coke and that McDonald's
Big Mac.
hamburger here and
Yeah.
there. And so, listen, there are little things that you stagecraft manage these foreign visits. And I think that was just a sign that the Saudis knew what he liked and wanted to let him know they knew it. So,
Indeed. And President Trump color coordinated, I saw, with the purple carpet that came down
wow,
and had
look
on
at
his
you.
purple
I didn't
tie.
even notice that.
Yeah, he definitely knew how to dress for the occasion.
How about
no
that?
surprise there.
You better get ready for another big celebration. I'm hearing that tomorrow there could be an announcement that Qatar Airways, the big airline in Qatar, could be buying a whole bunch of Boeing airplanes. That'll be another part of the investment. That's important because Boeing's had a lot of setbacks, including some cancellation of some recent manufacturing contracts. So this could be good news for the aerospace industry's workers.
And then, after that, President Trump is going to UAE, so maybe there's an opportunity for Emirates Air to do the same thing and one-up Qatar.
I think you're just going to keep seeing these deals go round up. And we're going to be out north of 10 trillion pretty quickly at the rate this is going.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, really amazing.
All right, so Senator Ron Johnson, who had already indicated to us that he wanted this to be more than one big bill, he wanted to piece it out more appropriately. Right. He said, I ain't going there, I ain't voting.
Yeah.
I ain't
and he hinted, he says, I want to see the tax bill, but I don't think I can vote for it if there's not large enough cuts. And today he wrote an op-ed saying, I can't vote for it. Yeah. He's a man of his word, and he's not, it's not surprising because he knows this is the one time in American history where Congress has a chance to really substantially stop the spending addiction it has, and he's seeing his colleagues just repeatedly fail to answer the call or make a difference. And so I don't know where it's going to end up. There's one idea that I think, I don't think Congress is going to have the courage to cut where it needs to cut. I just don't. As I said, I think they might be more known as coward grist when they're done instead of Congress. But Congress could slip two sentences into the reconciliation bill and say, all appropriations in our budget are not ceilings. They're not floors. They're ceilings. So if you don't need to spend up to that amount, you can't. It's like creating rescission authority for the president without having to have a vote on every one of those. It could allow Donald Trump to slash. And by the way, not deliver what Congress wants, but just find more efficient ways and not have to spend the money. And it would silence the courts. I'd keep an eye on that sort of unexpected language being floated into one of these bills to get conservatives back on track.
Just slide it in the fine print. Just listen.
No one ever reads these things anyways, right?
2-point font, and 70% of geriatric Congress won't be able to read it.
I'm not sure I could read it with 2.5 font. In all fairness,
I don't think I could either. Okay, something that hits home for me because of some ER experiences that I had in Los Angeles when ERs were packed with immigrants and you couldn't hardly get to see a doctor. I ended up spending 36 hours in the emergency room for choking on raw ginger. It's a stupid story and I'm embarrassed to admit it. But anyway, this hits close to home, a $3.5 billion cut in federal aid to California. That's what's being considered because of illegal immigrant health care.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, John, there are Democrats in California, Democrats in Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, the bluest parts of this country, who are fed up with subsidizing illegal immigrants, their health care, their education, their food stamps, everything that Californians pay some of the highest taxes in this country. And I hope they're fed up with it. They're going to have another option next year when it comes to their governorship. So
yeah, no, listen, I think that's right. And what we just talked about with Larry Krasner, all of these blue areas, whether they're cities and states, they're treating illegal immigrants better than they treat the American citizens who they were elected and are by Constitution supposed to protect and serve. The system has gotten so askew over this liberal agenda, and 24 was a correction moment. It could be a correction course if Congress can get its work done. President Trump is delivering all the things he said. I'm really worried that Congress can't keep up with the president.
yeah. You know, it's almost like the Hollywood mentality infected the entire Democrat Party. The rules
Yeah.
for thee, not for me, that entitlement attitude, and infected Democrats, and they felt like they could treat different classes of citizens or treat different citizens like they are different classes, and, you know.
Maybe time for another Tea Party movement in America. Imagine if that started happening during the Memorial Day
Wouldn't that
recess.
be interesting?
Big.
Boy, oh boy. All right, everybody, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We're going to be back here tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a wonderful night. Grant Stinchfield is up next.